Yo, what is going on, everybody? Dan Tramte here, and welcome to my tutorial series making a score follower video. This is the first of two videos. The one you're watching right now, we're going to go through the style guide, and in the next video, we're going to step through the process of actually producing the video, like in an editor. By the way, this short series is mainly a resource for the video production interns that are currently on the team, but I have received quite a few requests by viewers who are interested in the process of making a score follower video, and many of you might want to join the team but don't know if you really do, and you want to look at and see what the process is like before you do. I hope this helps, and maybe you can make your own score follower videos, but mainly this is for the team. Let's get started. I'm sure you've all noticed that some of our videos start with a short slide. The slide that we use is typically determined by how the work was curated, and you'll see that some works were curated as part of our featured composer series, some were curated as part of our classics series. I'm saying this, but the thing is you'll never actually use either of these two particular slides in your videos because the directors are the ones who will produce the works that are curated in these particular ways. You will, however, have to determine whether or not you will include the follow my score slide. And you'll figure this out by accessing our video production spreadsheet and looking at column B. If the work is labeled FMS, then include the slide. It should be accompanied by silence and last about 3 seconds. Then the music should start with the first system displayed. Otherwise, do not include any slide at all. In fact, start the video with the music right away at the very beginning at time 0 and display the first system with the title above it. We used to put the preliminary notes and title pages at the beginning of the videos, but we now put them at the end. I'll cover that in just a bit. But before I do, I want to show that you can access both of the production cue list and the slides in the pinned messages of our production Discord text channel. Next, I want to mention that we often use tools to automatically rasterize PDFs into individual images. And when you're using these tools, use at least 300 dpi, that's dots per inch, so that you do not have any pixelation issues. And then now that the PDF is rasterized into images, we can crop the images in an image editor or directly within the video editor. With only a few exceptions, by default, we display one system per slide. Now, this is kind of tedious, and it's a lot more work than a lot of the other, score YouTubers do, but it's worth it. I think our videos look clean and well produced largely because of this style decision and a few other style decisions. But also it allows us to maximize the display size so we can zoom into the score as much as possible. And most importantly, in my opinion, by turning the page more frequently, we are sort of situating the viewers into that temporal moment of the music, if that makes sense. This is particularly valuable to those who can't yet read scores. They can start piecing together the meanings of the symbols if there is a clear one-to-one relationship between the current moment of the music and the symbols that are displaying at that moment. Rather than, if we were to stack a bunch of systems into one slide, there's a lot of time that goes by during that one slide, and the viewers can get lost during that slide, if that makes sense. Just a couple technical notes. Make sure the frame and canvas of the video is 16 by 9 using a resolution of 1920 by 1080p. Now, there is no reason to use a faster frame rate than 23 frames per second. Indeed, you can go lower, but do note that you will begin to lose a bit of page turn granularity or accuracy if the frame rate is too low. If you look at some of our really old videos, you'll notice that many of them have black margins on the sides or on the top and bottom due to a difference in the crop box and the 16:9 YouTube frame. Please make sure to use a white background so as to eliminate the black margins. We don't like those. Sometimes when you crop the system so as to include all of the relevant information, which is what we want to do, you might see some system dividers or extraneous dynamic markings or slurs leaking over from other systems above or below. Crop those out or put a white mask on them in your video editor. We don't want those either. We like to display the score, I'll say, almost as large as possible. And what I mean by that is it's nice to stretch the system until either the sides of the system gets really close to the sides of the frame, or the top and the bottom of the system gets really close to the top and bottom of the frame, whichever comes first depending on the shape of the system. But what I'm trying to say is do leave a small amount of padding on the sides so that there's no, ink from the score that is directly on the edges. Of course, when you are stretching the image, make sure to lock the aspect ratio when stretching because you don't want it to display like warped at all. And this usually just means hold shift while you're stretching. The title page, preliminary notes, and performance notes should all be regarded in a similar way as, say, the credits at the end of a film on Netflix. Once the piece is finished, this important data is of course displayed, but in such a way that it does not disrupt the music consumption flow, if that makes sense. At the end of the video, simply place all of the preliminary slides in a sequence and set the slides to last for about 3 or 4 seconds. Just make sure the ending sequence lasts at least 4 seconds. So even if it's just a title page, make that title page 4 seconds. Some pieces have like 50 pages of preliminary notes. We all know who those composers are. I might have been one in the past. But in that case, cram them all in and make sure they do not last total more than 20 seconds. So the whole ending sequence should be more than 4 seconds, but less than 20 seconds. Even if that means each slide lasts for like a fraction of a second. Also similar to the Netflix credit scrolls, we use this time to add interactable end screen elements so that users can click on the links that point to our other videos. So we need about half of the canvas space to do this, so please leave the right half of the canvas completely blank except for the white background. Although tall scores aren't particularly ideal due to the landscape YouTube frame and the computer screens that we use to consume these videos, there are still instances in which we want to feature a work with a tall score. If the score is just a little bit tall, it is not a problem to display it one system per slide as we have discussed thus far. However, there comes a point when the shape of the system is almost like perpendicular to the frame of the video. If there's enough extra white space on the sides to display 2 pages at once without having to shrink the overall size of each system, we'll typically opt for that. Now, admittedly, it does run a bit counterintuitive to some things I've said already, like how it's nice to turn pages more frequently and therefore situate the viewer temporally. But in this case, our reasoning is simple. It just looks nicer this way. It goes without saying that being a score follower video producer means you'll get a lot of practice following scores and figuring out where the audio cues are and when to turn the page. But there are a few subtle things to note. First, I typically turn the page a few frames or milliseconds prior to the audio cue. That is I err on the side of early page turns because if you think about, say, a pianist reading a score, they're typically looking ahead a bit so that they can anticipate what they're going to play. And because of this, they'll end up nodding to their page turner prior to the, I guess you could say, actual page turn point, if that makes sense. And two, let's face it, sometimes the performers are a little bit off with their performance. It happens. In these cases, I try to find a point that sort of splits the difference of the performers so as to not make one performer look really bad and the others look fine. Sometimes I have to get a little bit creative and do things like turn the page super early so that the viewers forget what was supposed to be played before that thing got played incorrectly. I do think that we were kind of obligated to present the musicians in the best possible light. So I do what I can to cover up mistakes, and I would suggest that as well. Finally, with the type of music that we feature, there are some scores that seem impossible to follow. Don't worry, there are all sorts of steps to figuring out the page turns. I sometimes have to, unfortunately, go and study the symbols in the performance notes to figure out exactly what the sounds I should expect to hear when I see certain symbols. Sometimes I'll look for a live video of the same piece where I can see the performer's motions or the conductor and go back and forth between the two recordings to pinpoint where the page turns are. And in the worst case scenario, I just pull up the video production spreadsheet, copy the composer's email, paste it, email them and ask them to send me timestamps of the specific page turns I'm having trouble with. That is all for the style guide tutorial. I hope this helps. There is a PDF of the style guide pinned in the Discord production channel if you need to refer to it later.